to 2017. And these agreements were signed between IPPs in conjunction with DRA and ECD, that's the Electricity Company of Ghana, and Water Authority. Fourteen of these PPAs are currently of these 32 power purchasing agreements that we found in our study. 14 of these PPAs, we have 2 solar, 3 emergency power purchasing agreements. Then the rest of them are either gas or a hybrid of gas. And the rest of them are either hybrid of gas and other fuel sources. So 14 of them are either operating or near operational projects that have been installed with a capacity of 2,825 megawatts. So out of the 32, we have 14 that are near operation or operating at the moment. The remaining 18 PPAs with installed capacity of 4,107 megawatts have been signed but not yet constructed. If you look into our power or our energy mix, you'll realize that generation has increased, all right. Reliability has improved over time. If you compare this current situation to the period between, especially 2011, 2013, thereabout, you would notice that electricity generation has increased, reliability has improved. But then, one thing that is outstanding is our tariffs. Tariffs are very high. Electricity cost is very high as compared to other West African countries. And we found it is one of the things that is burdening our financial system in the country. Secondly, the transparency with which the power agreements were signed. Public information on the contracts are limited, and that is one of the reasons why this study was commissioned, that we had to find some of the challenges and identify some or prepare some solutions that we will come up with. I'm not sure if you will be able to see this, but because of the color. But from the 32 PPAs, we tried to segregate the challenges that we identified with the 32 PPAs. We have 4 key challenges that we identified. The first one we classified or we named as non-competitive price. That's the first challenge we identified with the PPAs that were signed or that are being signed in the country. So whenever PPAs are signed by non-competitive direct negotiation, in the absence of transparent market price information, it often results in project costs, and that pass through to consumers in the form of high tariffs. So most of the PPAs were signed or are being signed in a manner that it doesn't guarantee or there's no transparency in the manner in which they are being signed. And as a result, we are burdened with a lot of, we are burdened with higher tariffs that the consumers will have to bear or to carry. For instance, in the case of the Ameri deal, a 250 megawatts combined cycle gas plant approved at a staggering cost of $510 million. And the result is one of the highest electricity prices in West Africa we have. The second challenge we identified here is fiscal payments and accumulated debt. You can see a young boy burdened with a lot of debt. That's, we can say the young boy there is Mother Ghana, burdened with a lot of debt. So we found out that the PPAs that are being signed, the build-up of excess capacity charges guaranteed by the government often lead to enormous fiscal challenges and threaten the viability of the power sector as a whole. So if you take in 2018, excess generation capacity that was contracted under take-or-pay PPAs cost the government of 320 million in capacity charges, estimated to increase to 620 million annually with the addition of new plants in 2019. To highlight the financial burden on the sector or the country, that is, say, 33% of government's 2018 tax revenue, which is equivalent to the cumulative net sector debt of unused supply charges, estimated at 2,748 million, where 30% is payable to private sector. That's the debt situation of our PPAs that have been signed in the country. The fourth one, or the fourth challenge we identified in our study is the governance concerns. Once the public is not, or the general populace are not made aware of what the government is contracting the country or signing on to, then they begin to speculate. So the public is unaware of the existence of most PPAs signed by ECB, and essential details of the few that are known to exist are not fully disclosed. And I'm sure if we begin to do a head count of how many of us in this room are aware of these 32 PPAs that have been signed, I'm sure we will get our answer. The number of people that are aware of PPAs that have been signed. So in that light, the public is not able to hold electricity providers accountable or trust future government decisions, since they are obstructed from the information needed to understand these agreements. Once you don't understand what the government has signed onto, then you can't hold any of the parties accountable. You can't go to ECB and say, you've signed onto this, why are you not giving us this? Because you don't even know what they signed onto. At the same time, Parliament struggles to progress the PPAs in the chamber for approval, potentially due to fear of disclosure, allowing criticism to prevent an agreement. The fourth key challenge we found was the renegotiation risk. And this, we call it, the government is faced with, has a dilemma that is being challenged with. So in 2018, the dilemma for the government was with excess capacity and high tariffs from PPAs. On one hand, you have excess capacity. On the other hand, your tariffs are rising. But then you want to promote industrialization. What do? So the first issue here is you terminate 11 PPAs at a cost of $402 million instead of maintaining them and paying an annual average capacity cost of $586 million over the next 13 years. The second one is maintain 8 PPAs with a total capacity of 2,070 megawatts. Or you postpone 7 PPAs with a total capacity of 2,960 megawatts. So we try to look into the legal structure regarding PPAs. We did not find any specific law or regulation that specifically governs or regulates PPAs, power purchasing agreements. We did not find any specific law that has been passed to regulate signing onto PPAs. However, we are lucky that our constitution, along with several other regulations, provides some legal framework for power agreements or, in general, agreements that are being signed in the country. So, aside the Constitution of Ghana, the 1992 Constitution, we also have the Energy Commission Act 1997, which governs the sector participation, and the Act also established the Energy Commission with the primary mandates of planning and issuing licenses across generation, transmission, and distribution, and IPPs. So, to some extent, the Energy Commission regulates, or the Act regulates the IPPs that are being signed. However, it does not specifically indicate power purchasing agreements that are being signed on. Then we have the Public Utility and Regulatory Commission Act 1997, which also established the PURC and a body that is in charge of our utility bills. Then the Renewable Energy Act of 2011, which creates a separate legal framework to increase electricity generation from diverse renewable sources. So if you recall, I indicated some of the PPAs that were signed are renewable powered generators. So this act plays a role in regulating some of those PPAs that have been signed. Article 181 plus 5 and 6 in the Constitution grant that any state activity concerning international business, including guarantees or loans, must be approved by Parliament. So I guess, or I think this is the portion that we can rely on to say our Constitution can give some guarantee of regulation or legal regulation to PPAs that are being signed in the country. Now we identified also the barriers to PPAs transparency in Ghana. Some of the things that we think are blocking or making transparency in the country not fruitful. The first one we found to be politics of government cycles. And as the image beside it shows, we seem to be moving in cycles. Dr. Samuel mentioned, or in his introduction, he indicated governments are quick to introduce us or to mention what they have come to meet, but they are silent on what the current situation is. So the politics of government cycles is one of the key barriers to PPAs transparency in Ghana. The second barrier we found to be policy does not sufficiently promote transparency. The policies that we have in the country that regulate or that man our energy sector does not sufficiently promote transparency of the agreements that are being signed. So you would find that some of the contracts are being signed, but they are not necessarily required to make them public. You can't fault them because they are within the confines of the law. That is what the law requires them to do. So they must not necessarily publish what they signed onto. So they are not obliged to make the public know that this is what they have signed onto. The third one is commercial confidentiality. That's the third barrier we identified that is hindering on the PPA's transparency in Ghana. So there are some legitimate rationale that exists for contract details to remain private, especially during the negotiation process, because there are some items or some clauses of the contract that necessarily must not be made public. But then you can say sometimes they capitalize on some of those clauses not to make the entire agreement public, because there are some portions that the law or the policy requires them to keep out of the public. Then they capitalize on that to keep the whole contract or agreement out of public sight. So in conclusion, what we concluded is that Ghana could take a major step forward in building a competitive and sustainable power sector by committing to disclosure of future PPAs. Our main issue or our main recommendation should be, once the PPA or the agreements have been signed or have been signed, they should be made public, or they should be a database that anyone who wants to know about PPAs or agreements that have been signed can access them at any time if you want. You can just log on to Ministry of Energy to pick a document that have been signed with any of the parties, then you know what the details are. So this would level the playing field for all firms, reduce the governance and investment risk in the sector, and help to build public confidence about the government's management of the sector that is crucial to all national goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, both of you, for the presentation. Of course, you drawn attention to challenges associated with the lack of transparency in our PPAs, and I think that some of them include the high tariffs, non-competitive pricing, fiscal payments and accumulated debt, governance concerns, renegotiation costs and risks, and then the fact that we don't seem to have any specific law, or regulation, regulating the PPAs. We also went on to speak about some of the barriers to PPA, transparency. And then finally, the recommendations about, improving transparency with PPAs. But I was wondering whether the Right to Information, Act will help in this regard, because if you want information about PPAs, you can go under that law and demand that information. I don't know whether that's going to make any difference. But at this stage, I think I'll bring in our discussants, to give us their response, their comments on Mr. Bobio's presentation. So we'll start first with Honorable Samuel Chachia, who is the chairman of the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament.
Thank you very much for the very insightful presentation you made regarding the energy sector of the economy. My first reaction is that your focus was on emergency situation that we face, the two-shot era. Therefore, the kind of PPAs that we have, were they just like a knee-jerk reaction to the kind of challenges we had? So that at the end of the day, realize that we're so anxious to solving the energy crisis that we lost our rationality. That is one of the things which is achieved ourselves of it. But for all the education I've had, I do not understand the situation in which a poor man will say, will sign a contract with a dimension called take or pay. I've always wanted to see when there is excess capacity, even when you don't need the energy that will be generated, you pay for it. So it seems to me that probably in the arrangement to solve the energy crisis for the moment, we suspended our standing. I say it's not going to solve it, because if we didn't calculate the impact of these contracts we signed, and as Riley said, in 2018, capacity arising out of signed cost about 320 billion capacity charges. So I think that is an unpardonable commercial arrangement. Last me as a lawyer, it's causing financial loss the same. I'm tempted to say that those who are involved with this are expensive and undertaking. Country struggling to gather accounts. That is my first observation. My second observation is that because of the hard fact that we engage these power producers by way of our own preferences, and we do not subordinate the selection of these power producers to competitive bidding. As we know, the Procurement Act is supposed to be saying, and all manner of things can happen. But when you have a government hand-picking an individual or company to come and do power production, what will be the basis of the hand-picking? And maybe political patronage. What are you comparing with? We have nothing to compare with. That is why you go and get involved with America, and then you look at it, and as the presenter said, it's the most expensive power contract I've ever talked about. So therefore, the whole arrangement is in violation of the Public Procurement Act. If you look at it from the perspective that it was never open for people to come in and solve the problem, so we compare. The benefit of competitive bidding is that the ultimate beneficiary of the project has a way to compare, so that you will not be shorting. So anything that you don't compare, you have prices. Somebody is selling a bag of onions for
so and so price. And the person is in this market space all by herself. And we had about 7 other ladies or women selling the honey. So people say that, oh, goodness me, this is one of quality and its best price, and by choice of rationality, this is to be preferred against this other one. So in the absence of competitive bidding, and probably if you want to push what they say single source, we'll have these kind of challenges. So it is imperative that when you even have an emergency situation, go for competitive bidding. And excuse me to say, an army of people who want to deliver the service. And that really helps you to say that, look, I know you can do it, you can also do it. This is the best price. This is the one which has the best context for the country. So I don't support any arrangement in which companies can take government and produce such a very important service, which has serious implications for the economy. Another area of my concern is, should we have a standardized legal regime? Which is to say, when you leave individuals to contracting, see, they can put in the terms to make somebody happy. So Ghana is in need of electricity or whatever power we want to have. We meet the contractor, we sit together, experts go ahead and they are in the conclave to hammer out the contract. These contracts will be schemed in favor of the contractor. But if we had a legal regime, and you can't go and broker deals with any company, but any deal should be situated in a legal regime. This is what we want, and it's all statutory, as they say. Then you cannot contract out of statute. That contract will be set aside as none of void. I think that posture will be good for this country. That standardization of the legal regime for PPEs, I believe, is eminently sensible, and we should look at it. If not, then for whatever consideration, why is unpicked to come and provide power services? Then we look at him in the face and say, this is what we want, this is what we want. But if this is what the nation wants, and it's in our law, EPA regulatory law, then if your contract does not fit into that law which has been passed, it's not a void, it's of no regardless. This also makes equal sense when you look at this challenge of our politics of government cycles. You see, if government A comes in there and says that, look, by the spirit and tenor of this agreement, I don't want it. Although they will take you to the international arbitration where you pay FT for breaching international contracts and the rest of it. The government will say, we don't want this person. Or even the contractor is suspect or supporting my political opponent during the previous elections. I need to punish you by canceling your contract. But if it is statutory, contract is not, if you like, government sensitive. It doesn't depend on who comes in or who comes out. The contract is located in the statute, the law duly passed. And I'm afraid a change of government cannot come and alter the content of the law unless you are bold enough to go to Parliament to do an amendment. That will be a tall order. So the sense of standardization of the legal regime is very important. It also solves the issue of the politics of government sectors. I don't want to take too much of the time, but let me talk a little bit about the role of Parliament. Very, very important. See, a few people understand the essence of Article 1, 8, 1, 5, and 6 in which for every international contract, you need to have the approval of Parliament. So the contract is brokered by the government of the day. It was never said that it is the Parliament of the day that should negotiate a contract. And the distinction is very important so that, excuse me to say, you don't insult Parliament. So there could be an executive approval or even cabinet approval, and that document is ferried to Parliament. They give it to the appropriate committee, maybe Mines and Energy Committee, together with Finance, to look at the already brokered deal. And some of you should understand, they call it majority rule. So if you have the force, and then the committee will look at it. If there are some adjustments, you look at it. The committee might not have, to say, even the luxury of time to look at line analysis of it. Or the committee should, the greatest of respect, hide the whole business to my friend who did the analysis that, what is your understanding of this? Eventually, it comes to the House floor based on a report of the committee. Then the debate will ensue. Chairman of the Energy Committee will present the report of the committee. It's usually seconded, and then the motion begins to argue, and then eventually, at the conclusion of the consideration of what as many as are in favor, and we should have to say aye, and say aye. As many as are against, say nay. I that's the other one. So we should understand that the approval is probably to look at a few issues. If indeed there are technical issues which would even stop the cabinet from bringing into Parliament, that's another issue. So we come back to standard legality, which I believe make every government look at it away. So I don't know whether I've exceeded my welcome. I think I will say one thing with this final statement. I do not believe that a poor person should gamble with his little resources. I don't believe in it. When your resources are very limited, the greatest of respect, that's when you should be extremely wise in the way that it will give you the best advantage. So we should look at this again. It should never be said that in the entire West Africa, our power, the cost of our power is more expensive than any of the African. But the natural resources we have, measure the natural resources that we have against some of these West African countries, we are so naturally endowed. We should push for the best so that we reduce poverty. So thank you for this opportunity. If there's anything to add.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kachan, for a very insightful discussion today. Of course, yes. Just as a very clear end of the intervention. And then, well, I'm an economist. When I hear that, then I get to I tell myself, we are very rich. We are very rich. We have the resources. We only need to have the resources judiciously. I'm looking for the time that we can take ownership of these important sectors of the economy. Why is it that every time we have to go out there to buy products and services from other people? and then they impose all kinds of conditions. But maybe we are not into that. So, is it my understanding that okay, so Mr. Philip, sorry, CEO, Chamber of IPPs. This is the independent power producers. They are the ones that we are buying the power from direct. Okay, then you are very competent to elaborate on this issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me begin by introducing myself as a businessman at the Center of Controversy, Untitled Chapter, Business Capacity Power Purchase Agreement, Multi-Energy Sector Debt. I would like to appreciate the researchers of this paper, and also the opportunity given me by the Institute of Economic Affairs to present my side of the story, which I believe by the time we are living here, you will know what the truth is. So in the next few minutes, I will take my time to elaborate on the key themes that the researchers have touched on, and the respective previous lectures to give me that attention. From the work of Ishmael Aka 2021, that is the paper exactly, on a case study of Ghana's power purchase agreement, it was averred that Ghana's electricity sector faces an urgent crisis of immense financial strain that calls for a more transparent approach for contracting power in the future. This financial strain, according to the writer, is attributable to the opacity or confidentiality of the current power purchase agreements that we have. Indeed, the electricity sector faces an urgent transparent crisis of immense financial strain that to me deserves an unbiased investigation and assessment into the commercial and operational activities of the sector, actors, and stakeholders to ascertain the real reason for its inability to meet the required revenue targets that compensates the actors of the electricity supply value chain. And these actors are mainly the regulators, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Finance, Energy Commission, PURC, ECD, PICO, and the IPPs. According to the writers, the lack of transparency and the absence of detailed information disclosure implication of lack of transparency is confirmed by some works in the sector. For instance, in the work of the Energy Sector Recovery Program and in the works of some government functionaries, even if ECD collects 100% of its total invoices or revenue, it will still not be in position to pay all its debts to the actors of the supply value chain. It is projected that if this is not checked, by 2023, the sector debt will hit $12.5 billion. This motivated me into an investigation to ascertain the true cause for the justification for that statement. So let me begin by looking at a brief background or a brief history with respect to the reforms of the sector. From 2006 and 2007, Ghana's power sector evolved from what we call vertical integration system. That is where a state-owned enterprise, that is BRA, usurping the roles of generation and transmission, while the distribution function was managed by the Electricity Company of Ghana. And the operational objective of this system was to provide quality power and frequency to consumers, while ensuring supply reliability and tariff affordability. Let me emphasize here that the price of power under the vertical integration regime was strictly regulated and based on actual cost of production. What that means is that there is no issue of profitability or return on equity, as would be the case of a private investor. After some years, okay, what actually happened is that government do subsidize the electricity tariff, mainly due to the high cost of production or great cost overrun in that regime. And currently, as we speak, it's now noticed by the consumers, some of whom who interpret that Ghana's electricity prices is among the highest in the South, mainly due to the fact that the subsidies are no longer there. Let me also emphasize that electricity prices under this kind of regime is actually not cheap because of the financing arrangement. I mean, the unsolicited regime. So basically, we have graduated from that regime to what we call an unbundled system. A system where the power sector structure is segregated into various sectors that has to do with generation, transmission, and distribution. As we speak, generation is operated by BRA and the IPPs. Transmission handled by people, and the distribution, ECG, network, and EPCL. Now, I want to delve into the processes of procuring power generation capacity. Power generation capacity procurement is largely informed by the demand for electricity. Most importantly, economic, industrial, and residential use. And this requires the off-taker as a first step to conduct a study to assure itself of demand quantum for the power in collaboration with the technical regulator, that is the Energy Commission. And this study must not be based on only the grid or the current demand, but it must also consider anticipated changes in demand over time as a result of population growth or economic growth. So meeting this calculated, confirmed and predicted demand, as well as the tendency of procuring additional generation capacity, will require either what we call a solicited or unsolicited procurement approaches, based on the recommendation and approval of the Energy Commission, especially where the government is not in a position to invest in additional generation capacity to meet the growing demand. I will be touching on the advantages and disadvantages of the two approaches. But of the two options mentioned, the preferred method, as the Honorable Chairman for Parliamentary Committee, Mines and Energy said, is the solicited bid. That is what we call the competitive bidding, which is usually in the form of competitive bidding. This will often involve a formal request for proposals that will identify, among other things, the capacity of the power being sourced, the generation technology to be used, and the ideal location of the plant. All these factors impact greatly on the price of the electricity that we pay. So based on those parameters, the internal producers, like the IPPs, will bid against each other to showcase their competencies and qualifications, their ability to pay upfront the cost of building the power plant and offer the most competitive tariffs. The off-taker, in collaboration with the Public Procurement Authority or any special committee set by government, in collaboration with the sector ministry, will compare the prices, financial capacity, qualification, and track record of the parties involved to ensure that the selected bidder is a power source that will function reliably over time at a price that is most competitive to you and I. This, unlike Ghana, is the case in some African countries such as South Africa and Cameroon. This method is generally seen as very transparent and producing a more competitive result than engaging in direct negotiation of unsolicited proposal, as is the case in Ghana. The direct negotiation of unsolicited proposal does not engender the required level of transparency required, as the terms and conditions of cooperation between the private investor and the off-taker will usually be clouded by confidentiality clauses. Competitive tenders are increasingly becoming a popular choice for the procurement of power projects. The competition is typically based on price, but it may focus on the quality of technology, the speed of deployment, track records, and other factors consistent with government's priority policies. For the sake of transparency and public accountability, there are generally some stages in the competitive procurement process, which are expression of interest and the request for proposal. The procurement entity may use a competitive dialogue for complex transactions, as in the investment mode of maybe public-private partnership, BOT, etc., or project structures to further refine the project specifications, and may require input from pre-identified bidders before issuance of the RFP. And this process may involve inviting the selected bidders to engage in a dialogue on the project specification. The specification dialogue, which has impact on the cost of the project, will include the identification of the first technical solution, adjustment of the commercial structure, and reallocation of risks among other stakeholders. The procurement entity may then publish the defined RFP to all the pre-identified bidders, and the elements of the open tender process then apply to the evaluation of the preferred bidder. The advantages of the competitive tendering process, it increases transparency and improves public confidence. And also it is empirically proven to reduce costs. However, it requires a lot of time to engage and understand the market by leading the project. Also, it requires some sort of investment by the procurement entity or the government to develop the specifications and other criteria needed. Now, the unsolicited proposal, which is actually our present case of what Ghana, the level Ghana is now. This is a mix of quickly procuring power to deal with emergency situations and hastening power generation in countries with large deficits, as Ghana experienced in 2005, 2006, 2007 and 8, and also 2014 and 2016. In jurisdictions where there is no framework for competitive bidding, as Honorable has said, we go with unsolicited proposal. There is no structure. Also, for large complex projects where the number of potential developers are limited. However, there are some disadvantages. One, it is difficult to ensure that the project is market-based due to lack of price and price competition. There is no other competitors. Just have one investor and then with it, so you can never compare the prices. There is a potential of imbalance between an experienced procuring entity and experienced developer. Legal challenges may also arise in the process if procurement laws are not followed. Also, the procuring entity is required to actively engage the public and the private sector players to build confidence in the transparency process of the negotiation. So it is important to have adequate regulatory safeguard to ensure transparency and value for money in the process leading to the consideration of unsolicited proposals. So the regulatory safeguard should be detailed enough to reveal an appreciable level of information, which, in my opinion, is a concern of the IE or is a concern of the researchers. Now, I want to touch on the stakeholders' responsibility in ensuring transparency in the procurement of the power purchase agreement. The first I will mention is the government, which is expected as the first point of call when it comes to ensuring transparency in the procurement process. Government must create the enabling platform for the regulators, agencies, and their signs to discharge their roles professionally and objectively without interference. The level of interference in the function of the regulator is critical concern that impairs transparency. Ministry of Energy is expected to provide the supervisory role, policy guidance, and direction with respect to the power business strategy of the government, as well as tooling the relevant agencies and assets to function openly and effectively. As we speak today, the government policy directives are not clearly communicated to the industry participants, and we expect some improvement in the level of clarity and engagement. The Public Procurement Authority. This is a professional body on procurement, and they are expected to provide a clear and transparent structure as we speak today. The National Procurement Authority is not involved in the process leading to procurement of this unsolicited power plants. They can do more than they are presently engaging if we truly desire to enhance the level of transparency in the power sector. Energy Commission, as the technical regulator, they are expected as part of the transparency process to set the most cost-effective but tested technical standards that guarantee reliability and sustainability. They should be involved in the fiscal and technical spec audits of the various equipment, machines, components, and parts of the power plant before and after construction. Currently, they only do book audits before the construction. They ask you to submit the list of equipment that you use. That is what they do. They do not do fiscal examination for that after, before granting licenses or whatever, or after the project is completed. They only complete verification. That is not enough. There is a big risk in there, and I respectfully recommend to EC to consider fiscal audit before installation more seriously. Public Utilities Regulatory Commission are also expected to ensure proper and unbiased economic scrutiny of the various parameters of the financial models and data that forms the basis of the tariff setting after the EC's technical approval and recommendation. It is further expected that PURC must not dwell on the data provided by the parties, but must do further due diligence to ensure consistency and transparency in the tariff recommendation process. ECG, as the main off-taker, should engage experts, as in energy and financial economics, as well as commercial lawyers, to guide in the negotiation process to ensure value for money as a product of transparency. The composition of the team to lead in the PPA negotiation should involve the key actors in the transparency procurement because of the various specialization to ensure transparency. And we also expect the CSOs to join in policing the process of power procurement to ensure the best practices are employed. Let me jump to the issue of excess capacity charges. let me take my time to explain here that excess capacities not just happen. Like I initiated earlier, ECG with an energy commission sits down to calculate the energy demand. And based on that, a contract is signed. What is currently causing what is called excess capacity in Ghana is this. Because ECG is not able to expand its market for supply of power, they will have to ration the existing power plant for the power plant that have been procured. Let's say, for instance, power plant A that has a capacity of 100 megawatts, plant B has a capacity of say 200. ECG will now tell Gridco that we want to dispatch only 50% of plant A, which is 50 megawatts, and the remaining 50 megawatts has to be paid for, because that is the basis of the engagement. Plant B2 don't deliver 100%, deliver only 60%, leaving 40% undelivered. And in the business of power, this undelivered power has to be paid for by the off-taker, which is CC. And it is actually supposed to be pushed to you and I, the consumer, to pay. But because government cannot do that, they now have to look for the money to pay. So because it is heavy to pay, government is now crying that because ECG have signed so much IPPs or so much power plants. This is the real reason of the excess capacity that we have. It is nothing strange. ECG failed to expand its market to make sure that the product they have is marketed, is sold to the public. But the reasons for excess capacity charges in our tariff was to help the investor repay project loans and interest on them when it is due, pay the sponsors of equity and basic contracts, as well as pay corporate taxes and others. So on the issue of pay for pay, one essential component of a power purchase agreement under the unsolicited is take for pay. And the popular meaning is that the off-taker is paying for the power it has not used, and it is the cause of its indebtedness. This understanding misses the point that the fact that the power producer has paid for the construction and operations of the power plant means that the off-taker or the government is relieved of the burden to source and procure financing to pay for the plant itself. So in fact, if the off-taker has a limited balance sheet, the off-taker will not be able to finance the power plant in the first place. So it is worth making clear that the reverse of this assertion is equally stated in the PPAs. The off-taker, that is ECG, equally has the right to claim for non-performance or unavailability if the power producer is unable to meet the required energy it has contracted. So if ECG is far from us and we are not able to produce, ECG also has the right to charge us. This is what the take or pay clause means. It is not a clause that favors only the independent power producer. It has two sides. But it's just unfortunate that our partner ECG is at the, let me say, use the word at the losing side. If it is us, we will also pay. So that is how it is in the PPAs. It is just unfortunate that it is not available for you or for the public to understand. Yes, please. Come conclusion. So, what is called overcapacity, I would rather call it an underutilization of power generation capacity. As a businessman, I would rather look for an opportunity to expand my market and sell the product. I'd like to conclude by saying that when we have an excess capacity in all the PPAs, there is a specific clause that provides for amendment, and also that is also open for negotiation of the cost of the excess. So if I'm selling power to you at say 50 cents, the off-taker has the right or is open to approach me to say that I don't have market for this money, but if you can reduce the cost for me, I will be able to use it. And this is available in the PPAs. But unfortunately, I I don't know if I should say that they are unaware of this provision or they are unaware of how this thing plays in the business of power. I will not, because of time, I will not go further, but I have some few recommendations to finally make. Yeah, I will take 2 minutes, please. Yeah. Government should set timelines for the implementation of PPAs on the signature date. Failure for any company to deliver on the agreed timeline should result in automatic termination, so that it will not result in a cost to government. Government should also consider public-private partnership model in the procurement of new generations. We should also ensure all of us should join hands in putting pressure on ECD to do more than they're currently doing, so that these issues of excess capacity can be resolved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. I'll prefer to use it. But that was a whole lecture. No, in fact, he's provided very in-depth knowledge and information about the entire presentation. I thought he came just to defend the PPAs, but looks like you found sometimes you told the other way to even defend the purchase of those purchases, and sometimes you also criticize them. I think we will need another session for you to come and elaborate on some of those things. It's very, very, very impressive. But I must say that we don't have much time, especially in this era of conflict. We don't want to be, close in a place like this for far too long. So straight away, I don't think I'll ask the presenter to respond. Straight away, I think we can take questions from the floor. Please, can you come and can you take the mic around? Can you take the mic around? Yeah. Please, can you raise your hand? Can you take the mic around? Yeah, please, go ahead.
I think it's Michael Davis. Ghana Institution of Engineering.
Okay.
Mainly the submissions on the submissions, you see that all that affects us is people failing to either do what they need to do, or they have bad intent towards some other objective. And I say this because when we talk about energy, the demands for energy are low. We project low. And energy is not something you can just go about for a planet. It requires long-term planning because infrastructure is expensive. What we are doing is we wait until the very last minute and then we say, oh, we need emergency. This is what's happening. We have the Procurement Act. But we know what happens in our various institutions where we are not supposed to engage in emergency. But the gatekeepers will wait until the very last minute and come and talk to the to give this emergency. So is this not bad to get? For me, these are the questions we need to ask as a nation. That we have Energy Commission, we have all the people who are supposed to guide us like ECG, like Brian said. And yet, we have a situation where we are paying for excess capacity. So for me, these are things that we need to begin to question ourselves. And when the Honorable Chairman for the Mines says that Parliament's hands are always virtually tied, I beg to disagree. We are elected people to go to Parliament and say that this is good or this is bad for the nation. If government brings a bad, it doesn't make this bad. But for us to act as oh, our hands are tied and therefore we have to vote and let it go. That we are not doing this nation in a good service. So I think that we need to begin to look at ourselves and as institutions and question our motives in some of these things that we do to the Ghanaian. I think that we have gone beyond the point where we don't know what the problem is. Underlining all this is people's greed and personal interest. We need to deal with it and we need to confront it. We make laws in this country. We don't enforce laws. So the next thing is let's pass another law. What has happened to us? I think that we need to very good confront some of these issues.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The Ministry of Energy, therefore, I will give you. First, let me find the this is done. And before I move on, tell you what we're doing. Let me get clarification of my head. If the plant hasn't run, for energy that has not been generated, the cost of power has two components. The first component and the fuel component. So when the plant declares availability and that is run, non-people for the capacity that component. So that's what is right to the capacity, excess capacity in it. That's the first. In your presentation, you also mentioned that most of the time, government don't say what they're doing. But I want to tell you what government is doing now. Because of the challenge that we find ourselves in, government, first of all, had to review the numerous CPAs to ensure that some are rescheduled, some are downsized, in order to reduce the cost. Furthermore, government is currently going through a renegotiation process with the plants in the function, all in the bid to reduce the cost of the system. Now, the way forward, we have come up with the basic competitive procurement policies, which have been separated. All the sector agencies that was done last year ago, to ensure that we procure power competitively. We also come up with what we call integrated power system plan that will apply clearly what you need at what time, so that you prepare adequately for it, so that to avoid issues of procuring emergency power. And what we are doing also is that from the current ongoing PPA renegotiations, any power plant that has not yet been constructed is now coming on with new rules. That is what the new minister has directed. And we have communicated to ECG and the Ministry of Finance. What we are in this is now going to be take and pay and not take or pay. No more guarantees, ECOA, ECA, SA, no more local tax exemptions. We can only provide liquidity support, let's say for 3 months or so, of time. And also, we are capping the cost of energy. For example, basically at 10 cents per kilowatt hour. And after that cap, we are going to do tender in order to even lower that price. So these are some of the steps that we are taking to ensure that we move out of the current challenge. One thing about standardization of the legal regime is also very welcome idea. I think I need to see how it comes to reality. So let me stop here for now, and then thank you for permitting me to make this report. Thank you very much.
Are you admitting that there were problems with the previous PPAs that you are doing? That's trying to do things right. Is that what you are saying? Yeah. Is that what you are saying? Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'm just asking.
Yes, I'm saying that.
But you are civil servant.
And that's a problem.
So you were there in the previous administration.
I'm not a
So when
yes, I'm not a director of power. So it falls partly on me now.
what I'm trying to understand is that you were there under the previous administration.
Yes.
And you provided correctly that
I don't think let me tell you what we are doing, but this is mission.
Yeah, okay. Please, can you take your yeah, so you are fine.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I think it's a traffic break. One time.
Can the gentleman use the mic so that we can all hear?
I am William Ofei, as Deputy Director General, Internal Audit Agency. I'm in charge of technical and certification. I want to give some contribution, and I want to hammer on preventive reactions and link them to how we have prevented that or going forward, how we can help in making sure prevention burdens, lost costs that we've had. I think it's important that in our planning, we must know, and we know, I think we all know, the range between energy and economic growth. And so the issue of investment into energy as the economy grows, in terms of population, in terms of the build sector, that is infrastructure, in terms of our industrial and all that. So it is better to borrow to invest than to borrow to sort of make sure we survive. So I believe that we look at that in a public manner. It's also important to look at our ethical leadership, particularly in terms of our governance, because our ethical leadership and body of knowledge sort of fail in terms of the promptings and the decisions that were made. But there is this that I strongly feel we should know and we should look at. The Public Procurement Act is a general law, it's a law of general application. And what we did, or in all cases application, fell into that. It might not be as technically as apt or exact to apply. But in terms of its general sense, the Public Procurement Act and law could be applied. In fact, it should be applied. It should be applied because the issue of the public procurement, it does not show behind what we call Pareto optimality. The second principle is for a public allocation to be Pareto optimal. In other words, to make sure that there's the best and best possible use of the resources. It should go through a competitive process. That is the theoretical basis behind the public procurement. The exemptions are that when issues of popularity about that particular issue is over and above the competitive nature of it, then we look for that. Unfortunately, when the peculiarities are not weighty enough to nullify the competitive advantage, we rather go for that aspect. So it's very important that we hammer, and from the auditing perspective, it's very important that the general applicability of the Public Procurement Act should not be abused. Almost everything in our public space can go through it, unless there's pure justification. And the law makes it clear, pure justification. And in so many other things, apart from the next sector, as auditors, we have seen that the it is strongly founded in individual economics. Very important. So I insist that the PPA agreement will be our business agreement, but don't do the procurement law. It is cheap. Have been better, have avoided everything. The emergency of 5 years emergency cannot be justified. We were the books for 5 years. Clearly, if you are not an engineer, but couldn't be justified. So I think we should look at our plan, borrow, better to go invest, because so that we increase the demand. You know where the business is going. We can increase the demand. Demand means that there is a backing repayment. Now we know that you go to the industrial sector, it's going here, and the others are going to consumption. Instead of we borrowing to pay something that is meant to sustain us, so for us to survive. I think I will end here. A lot over maybe great submission.
Please go to the side. We should be very time. We should be wrapping up the next 10 minutes. Well,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. My name is Elvis Morrison. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Mines and Energy Committee. That's my chairman now. Vice. Mine is a quick question. Mr. Elokun says something about in Ghana, you don't have excess capacity, but under utilization of power. Can you please clarify why we actually underutilize power? And from your perspective, do you think we needed a 2 PPA signed at the time? We signed it. We didn't even utilize half of it. But from where you sit and as a Ghanaian, do you think we actually needed the 32 PPAs? And also with the CEO, the CSOs, I think we are also in a way not doing Ghana good. When there's an issue like energy issues, I expect the CSOs at times to write a paper, present to Parliament when we are debating on issues of that nature. But all that they do is to sit on radios and without coming out officially. So maybe officially, this is our position as CSOs on these issues, like the other issues. I was so happy there was I read something in the newspapers, but I expect the CSOs to write officially to Parliament, to the committee that is working on such issue. So this is our position. Read it and maybe consider what we are also saying, so it will be included in whatever we are actually deliberating. But we didn't know that we should do that. Oh, no, we didn't. No, but look, so we go to the church. No, but yeah, but does that solve the problem? No, it just makes noise in the media without solving actual problem on it. But you can write. Okay, no, but if the committee, and some of the CSOs have been doing, if the committee is actually considering an issue, CSOs can bring their input through writing to the chairman of the committee, and you look at it and learn from it and deliberate on it as well. So that is also another suggestion that I'm putting across. And my last one is, do we need another law in dealing with PPAs? Do we really need that? There's so many. It's about implementation. You don't need any law again to just deal with issue of PPA. Energy Commission has RTI, like that act actually helps in transparency and all those. So for me, you don't need any other law again in dealing with PPA. The existing laws, all that we need to do is to actually work with those laws and respect the rule of law.
Please, you have someone. If not, I'll give you 2 minutes to answer your question. Please. Please, can you answer this question?
From the years that let me remind all of us here that around 2009, 2000, it was a government policy directive to make Ghana electricity hub for West Africa. And by policy directives, all institutions that are in line must follow. ECG as the marketing department, the business development department of the power sector, by that policy directive is expected to expand its horizon of business. And by expansion, it is required that to support that expansion with additional capacities. So to fulfill that objective, there's a set of motivation to this energy commission to procure additional PPAs. Let me emphasize that ECD does not get up to sign PPAs or to procure additional generation. It is through a study between ECD and the regulator, Energy Commission, that do the demand plan. Based on that, they determine which capacity to bring in at which particular point in time. So these are the 2 PPAs I believe may be part of the motivation of the market expansion of making Ghana the electricity hub of West Africa. That is people are nothing good for this. Yes. So I'm just
There was another question about excess capacity.
He says,
He said
slides.
So let me explain that to you what that means. ECD, as I mentioned, was supposed to develop market. That is his business, marketing and selling part of the process. So you have procured additional capacities that you do not really have market for, which you must work hard to actually sell. That is what it means. And because you have procured and you are not able to sell, it becomes the cost on you, which you cannot blame the items for. You know, IPPs don't force capacity for not taking control. IPPs don't force their capacity on the operator. It is what the operator wants that is provided. We should it's right. We should get I don't think it's all about this for your very important because we are continuing, which have generated a lot of discussion. I think we have done and done. And it's not an outside. Public is also not an outside. Yeah, so I thank you all for coming. And I think this discussion will continue. Maybe half an hour.